On the dais to kindly inaugurate the exhibition by lighting the lamp. Thank you all. This exhibition perhaps has been one of the most difficult ones to mount due to its scale and complicatedness in obtaining works, as there were no reliable records. Juggling with the many international engagements and constant stream of exhibitions to be displayed and coordinating all this is a very daunting and challenging task. Request Professor Rajiv Lochan, Director, National Gallery of Modern Art, to deliver the welcome speech and share his thoughts about the exhibition.
Thank you, Tejasvi. Shri S. G. Vasudev, Professor Shiv Kumar, Radhakrishnan, distinguished guests. The rain gods did keep us in doubt whether we should celebrate this in this wonderful lawns of the National Gallery of Modern Art or limit ourselves to the auditorium. He's been with us and to enjoy this fresh air, both in terms of art as well as the environment. Auguste Rodin once said, I quote, "Where did I learn to understand sculpture? In the woods, by looking at the trees, along the roads, by observing the formation of clouds, in the studio, by studying the model, everywhere except in the schools," unquote. Ramkinker Baij was one of the most outstanding artists of modern India. His monumental sculptures have established landmarks in public art. Perceived as a bohemian, he's been the subject of much mythification. And we are all here to understand what went on in the mind of this creative genius, because when you see the works in its totality, it's only then that you're able to comprehend a certain continuity of thought process and engagement. When one reflects upon Kinker's unique approach of art, Kinker Das he was known as, and art education not to forget, one is reminded of this wonderful story, a Zen story that in many ways reflects his approach to a holistic educational methodology that addresses and insulates the importance of the vitality of form and content than merely its physicality. The Zen story, I'd like to sum it up, of course, would have loved to share it in its truest details, reveals how a young British artist, through his command over academic realism, produced a mirror image of the sow. As the painted sow, however, lacked the essence and vibrancy of life, it failed to emote the pulsating nuances of each breath. The master asked the students, "Your sow is dead." I said, "Why? Doesn't it represent its physicality?" The master said, "Your sow was sleeping, she was breathing. Where's the quality of breath?" I think that's what Kinker Da, through his inventive ways, inculcated these sensibilities into his art, as well as instilling these values amongst his students. Professor Shiv Kumar, who's here with us, is one of those distinguished scholars who has researched each aspect of the period of which Ramkinker belonged. He has not only analyzed a remarkable artist and his sensibilities, but also has contextualized him in its totality. I recall Professor K.G. Subramanian, in his book, The Moving Focus, writing about Kinker Da, and I quote, "A comprehensive retrospective of Ramkinker Baij's works is well nigh impossible, because he is one of those artists who is an art historian's despair, who has never kept his works together or kept a reliable record of them, or even cared as what happened to them once the creative fervor was over." Unquote. It is with great pleasure and pride that I, on behalf of National Gallery of Modern Art, mark the mounting of an exhaustive retrospective of the works of this outstanding artist, who is not only an iconic sculptor, but is also a painter and graphic artist. The retrospective has been extremely lovingly, dedicatedly, been curated with great insight and painstakingly, I don't have more adjectives to be able to by sculptor K.S. Radhakrishnan, who was also associated with the artist in his last years. Let's give him a big hand first. We also would like to acknowledge the contribution and thank Professor K.G. Subramanian and Professor A. Ramchandran, who have advised us in conceptualizing this retrospective. And to tell you the truth, for Radhakrishnan, we have observed it, we've interacted for years at end. It's been a true labor of love. And that's what we have brought to you to share at Bangalore. On this historic occasion, we are honored to have with us our chief guest, eminent artist and member of the Apex Committee of NGMA, S.G. Vasudev, and to Bangalore and to the country. Actually, he needs no introduction. Indeed, honored to have you with us. We were delighted and we had actually waited for Sri Abhijit Sen Gupta, former Secretary, Ministry of Culture, under whose tenure NGMA and its various functional aspects were being formalized. Unfortunately, he's been indisposed, but he has conveyed his good wishes to today's evening. We would have loved to have him here, but it's been a little difficult. NGM is also happy to announce a number of publications, phenomenal publications, because these retrospectives are the true landmarks that put artists into their entire context in the lack of properly researched publications. Being published on this occasion, Ramkinker Baij, authored by Professor Shivakumar, being brought out in collaboration with the Delhi Art Gallery. My Days with Ramkinker, originally authored by Mr. Somendranath Bandyopadhyay and translated from Bengali in English by Ms. Bashwati Ghosh, being brought out in collaboration with Nyogi Books. Ramkinker Yaksha Yakshi, authored by K.S. Radhakrishnan, brought out by the Musai Foundation himself, and supported by Akar Prakar and Gallery Nivya. Ramkinker Straight from Life, authored by Johnny M.L., brought out by Musai Foundation. Besides these extremely well illustrated publications, the NGMA has published 2 comprehensive books on Ramkinker that provide a holistic view of Ramkinker, the man and the artist, authored by Professor K.G. Subramanian, Ramkinker and his work, and Professor A. Ramachandran, Ramkinker, the man and the artist. All these publications are available, I'm sure will add and complement your large repertoire of publications at your I would also not like to forget that the distinguished scholar, Professor R. Shivakumar, would be delivering a lecture on Ramkinker Baij tomorrow at 3 p.m. to join us, irrespective of the rain. Thank you for joining us. Welcome once again and enjoy the show. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Lochan. The retrospective has been insightfully curated by Mr. K.S. Radhakrishnan with Professor K.G. Subramanian and Professor A. Ramchandran as advisors. K.S. Ramachandran, one of the most notable among the new generation of sculptors, was a student of Shantiniketan. I now request Mr. Radhakrishnan to share his experiences about the exhibition.
Pardon me for my bad throat. At the outset of this brief curatorial remark, I would like to mention again, like what Rajiv has talked about, already mentioned in his talk, K.G. Subramanian's valuable observation made in 1972 about the difficulties faced in creating a retrospective on Ramkinker Baij and my friend Shivakumar's fresh insights on this curatorial problem. Subramanian wrote, I quote, a comprehensive retrospective, Rajiv has already spoken, of Ramkinker Baij's work is well nigh impossible because he is one of those artists who are an art historian's despair. 40 years later, Shivakumar notes that the Ramkinker's works are now better known and his importance in the history of modern art is better recognized. Yet, we are not much better placed. The despair still remains. According to him, this retrospective will be judged largely by the contribution it makes towards dispelling this despair and replacing it with greater understanding and clarity. Nevertheless, in my humble opinion, the despair cannot be completely dispelled. But this exhibition opens up new possibilities to explore the scope of research. What we can claim is that the curatorial, archival and academic space is more widened. Now more for the people to work on Ramkinker's work. Comprehending the difficulties in providing a perfect sequential and chronological narrative for this exhibition in terms of structure, I have divided the retrospective into subcategories. So these include delineating the life and times of the artist through his works, contextualizing the previously scattered works within the discourse of modern art history, and tracing the trajectory of the works that had moved from the artist studio to various private collections, and finding the linkages of his works with the larger discourse of art history of contemporary times and so on. This difficult research for clues that could bridge the gaps took me from National Gallery of Modern Art to collections like the various private collectors. The explorations led me to discover a host of materials about him. Not just visual, but also anecdotal inputs in the forms of rare literature, dialogues, conversations, correspondence, interviews, and even his reminiscences written mostly in Bengali. Besides these, I found several photographs from the shelves of individuals, former students, colleagues, and others who had been associated with him at the various junctures of his life. And based on these resources, over a period of 3 years, a new picture of Ramkinker evolved. The academic contextualization of Ramkinker Baij has already been done, like already mentioned by Rajiv, by R. Shivakumar, the scholar, the art historian, in his famous essay titled The Contextual Modernism. So this was the critical and historical parameter I had when I started approaching his work from a curatorial perspective. present him through his large body of work within the narrative of contextual modernism. This exhibition is my humble attempt to find answers for this very important art historical and curatorial question. So it's very important to note that by the age of 32, Ramkinker Baij had done one of his most seen and much talked about works, the Sandal family. At this time, his sculptural experiments were new and daring. His techniques of working with direct concrete, creating structures with rugged contours and surfaces had no precedence in the Indian sculptural scene. His sculptures out of certain lags. He lacked material, like cement that was rationed. Hence, he had to innovate a plan to execute a sculpture within the given constraints, so while simultaneously infusing it with monumentality and presence. Figure of modern Indian sculpture. The most interesting aspect that I could highlight, not only as a curator of this retrospective, was his ability to be spontaneous and thoughtful at the same time. His works show how deeply he experienced life in and around himself. He was not working for any particular social cause, but at the same time he was connected to the social reality that he was born into and had nurtured him. His responses to society through his works were not deliberate, but he was aware of the context that they were arising from. When he painted the life of a farmer or a laborer, his intense awareness about their lives and conditions made him paint something that was not always perceived by other artists. In one of his works titled Shifting Generations, he painted a man, a woman and a child toiling in the fields. Also, one notices a human skull on the side. Very skillfully, the artist shifted the narrative thread of painting from the plight of a farmer to a philosophical truth, the cycle of life. Ramkinker becomes master of irony through the incorporation of such elements in his works. My curatorial venture aims at flagging those junctures where Ramkinker met with those who traveled with him, before him and after him. In other words, this retrospective aims to be a context in which post-1980 generation of Indian artists sees, accept, understand or misunderstand the work, the master creator, the artist, the human, the Ramkinker Baij. I would like to use this opportunity to acknowledge the key figures who blessed me with the immense support and encouragement throughout the 4 years of this wonderful curatorial journey. I would like to thank Professor Shivakumar for his scholarly insights and the constant tireless discussions that we had, which has helped me immensely in visualizing Ramkinker in retrospect. I am thankful to Professor K.G. Subramanian for adding to my understanding of Ramkinker, especially with his personal reminiscences of the artist. Grateful also to Professor A. Ramachandran for his curatorial suggestions and insights. The support from the director and the staff of the National Gallery of Modern Art for assisting with the documentation of the NGMA collection was extremely useful in archiving Ramkinker's rubric of works. And also, I would like to thank the staff of the National Gallery of Modern Art, Bangalore, for mounting the show. I also would take the chance and the opportunity to sort of thank Brick India team for their involvement in the production of the documentary. And also grateful to Delhi Art Gallery for fulfilling a daunting and ambitious work of publishing the main catalogue of the show. I thank Bikash Niyogi for his efforts in translating an important